There you go.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Susanna Song. I am the Director of Marketing and Communications at Highwire Networks. And joining me today for this not your typical webinar, I like to add the not your typical because I know many of you guys are just burned out from webinars as I am. We're on Zoom all day, we're video conferencing, and the last thing we want to do is listen to another boring webinar. So I promise, and I will keep my promise, that this will be short and sweet and you will get a ton out of it. You will learn a lot about what Zero Trust Remote Access is. And so joining me this morning is my colleague, Chief Technology Officer, David Barton. Hi, David.
Hello, Susanna.
As well as John Serena. Hi, John.
Hey, Susanna. How are you?
Many of you guys watched the video on LinkedIn or on social media, or someone emailed you the 1-minute video teaser. It was a conversation between John and David Barton. So John is like many of our customers who has a lot of challenges with their current VPN. They're growing, they're merging with other companies, and they just want an easier VPN or remote access. And so John called up David and as you heard, had some questions about what else is out there. His CTO or CISO wants to maybe explore Zero Trust. And David promised to give a demo or to show what Overwatch offers to our partners and customers today. So I'm going to hand it over to John and David to continue their conversation.
Thank you, Susanna.
Thanks, Susanna. Yeah, so Dave, I think we just to recap, we since COVID hit, our remote users have tripled, and I think the applications we're using are totally different than we set the VPN up 10 years ago. We've got a merger coming up, and we're the CISO is on the Zero Trust bandwagon. So given all that, what are your thoughts?
Okay. So I think, the growth doesn't surprise me. In fact, if I were a betting man, I would suggest that we're going to see more commercial real estate go empty as organizations are keeping their employees home, not necessarily because of COVID, but COVID was the catalyst for them to go, why am I investing all of this money in real estate? And in a lot of cases, it's very expensive real estate. So I don't think the problem's going away. But I think to your point, what it's highlighted as we've added more and more users into this space of remote access, it's highlighted the fact that the controls we have and the controls we've deployed for years aren't good enough, right? They might meet a particular use case, but when you start thinking about how do I lock down application layer controls, how do I prevent data from leaving my network from employees who are dialed in, how do I allow them to use their own devices without necessarily having my client and all of my other security controls on their device, right? All of those use cases come into play as you start to scale the number of remote users. So to that point, I think this is a great conversation.
Right. So it would be nice to we have all those use cases, actually, contractors, the M&A activity when we're trying to bring another company in and have access to applications right away without a lot of work. And so we're facing all of that.
Okay. So I'm going to just show you a quick overview of the product that we picked to help solve this problem. So I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you can see it real quick.
Yep, I got it.
All right, so one of the first problems I talked about was the client, right? We have folks using Macs, folks using PCs, folks logged in from kiosks or wherever. And we as a security team don't have the controls that we used to. So one of the advantages of this platform, this Transient X platform is the client downloads as it needs it. It's a they call it a disposable network, but effectively a network gets stood up on demand, right? And what that means is the client piece, it downloads its code. So at that point, we don't care if it's a corporate network device, a corporate laptop, a Mac, whatever. At the end of the day, the client gets put on there, and then everything within that client is containerized. And this is where the beauty of this platform comes into play. The container is isolated from the underlying operating system. So everything within the container is protected. So if I'm at a coffee shop and I'm on their device, or I'm in a library, public library, there's a pretty good chance those public devices have been infected with something, right? It's just 99% of the time we're going to find something bad on those devices because nobody's really managing them. So with that bad code, this client will sit on top of the OS, but it doesn't interact with the OS.
Kind of like a Zoom.
Better than a Zoom, right? Because now I have controls within that virtual environment where I can say you can't cut and paste, right? You can't. I can start to build some DLP functions around the data in that environment, and even better, when I shut down, that client goes away, and all the data that was within it goes away. So
Interesting.
the client's pretty powerful. The client is.
Does it have authentication?
So that's where I was going next, right? Okay. So as you use a client and you get to the middle, which is the controller piece, the client authenticates you, the user, being a couple of different approaches. But if you're an Okta shop, we have an integration with Okta. We can integrate with Active Directory. At the end of the day, there is a multi-factor opportunity, and depending on your environment and depending on how we configure it, but an opportunity to use multi-factor to authenticate the user. Now we know that they are who they say they are. Again, we don't care about the end device, right? Because the end device is protected by the virtual environment. And in this data stream here, the client talks to the cloud the controller. The authentication happens, right? Active Directory and Okta. And then what happens then is, based on role-based permissions, this client and the user of this client then bypasses the cloud and goes directly into the destination environment, right? So the firewall doesn't need any special setup. You don't need a special VPN concentrator on this side. And then that connector has access to application layer data, right? So traditional VPN in this world is I would connect in through the cloud to a VPN concentrator, and now I have access to everything over here on the right.
So the data stream and the the management stream are separate. Do I need VPN concentrator, jump servers? What are we going to require?
You don't. Effectively, this connector is a virtual instance that's going to run inside your environment. We're going to connect to that virtual instance once we're authenticated, and then we're only going to have access to the apps on the far right here that we have been provisioned. So effectively, and I'll show you this in a minute. I went ahead and set up an account for you, but effectively, when you log into this client, the apps you've been given permission to are automatically provisioned in your window. And now when you click on them, it's running across this encrypted pipe, by the way. This is all encrypted into your network and has access at that point to those applications. So, when you talk about zero trust, this is effectively extending zero trust in your corporate environment out to your endpoints, right? And with that zero trust, I can control what applications on what servers. You don't get the full IP access. You're only getting a layer 7 access to that device. therefore, what I'm doing is doing micro-segmentation at the application layer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's the application talking to the application at the connector, correct?
Correct. That's exactly what it is.
And does that stream, that data stream, is that going through Highwire's cloud or a vendor cloud, or because we're
So from
avoid
a session establishment, what happens is the client here talks to the controller. After the authentication happens, the session then to the controller ends, and the connection that's encrypted goes directly into the environment. So at that point, no one in the middle will be able to see what's happening, because again, that session, this green line, is encrypted all the way to the application layer.
do I have access to just web-based, or we have SAP, Oracle,
You
we
actually,
have some legacy apps?
yeah. So you've got, full web apps. Obviously, anything that's SaaS is a piece of cake because it's just port 80 effectively. We can actually deliver a command prompt if you wanted to, right? So what would effectively happen is we would deliver a command prompt here that would terminate inside your network. And now when I ran a ping or an NS lookup, I'm looking in this environment, and I'm not actually giving you full IP access into this environment.
Cool.
Does that help?
Yeah, sure does. What's the setup time for this? Is it complicated? And you guys manage this, right?
We do. We manage this for our customers. Effectively, we probably the longest piece is understanding what access you want to have, and that's really just a conversation. What apps do you want to provision for remote access? We go ahead and we build that profile here. We turn on the authentication here in the cloud, so that you can go ahead and authenticate into the platform, and then we give you access from the client side. Again, the client, when it turns on, when you actually browse to it, it's going to install a client, and we can show you that too. And once the client's installed and the authentication happens, everything else is automatic. It's just self-provisioned. It's very cool.
So you sent me the client. I just logged in, and
Yep.
then
In fact, let me do that now.
While John is setting that up, David, quick question. So how often do you think users are getting breached using the current VPN or the traditional VPN? Because it seems like it makes sense that you would want to bypass all of that with zero trust. But I'm curious, like,
So
hackers actually
that's a great,
it?
yeah, that's a great question. The challenge is it's hard to give you a number. We can point to some pretty high profile examples of traditional VPN being used as a vector, right, for bad guys to get in and take data. Again, the challenge with traditional VPNs is twofold. One of them is it's access to everything, right? So from that perspective, once I authenticate, most people don't deploy it in a controlled environment where they've got access control lists and other controls protecting that session. So once I get in, I'm in. Then I think that's probably the primary issue, Susanna.
Got it. So John, we see a mountain
So
and
this-
a beautiful ocean. We see your wallpaper.
they don't have a share screen. Let's see.
There we go.
There we go.
Does that work?
Yes.
Yep. Now we
I don't know
see.
I have no idea what I did, but here
That's
we go.
perfect.
So this is my user screen, and presumably the applications are policy based, right? So you set up for sales guys or for IT or for developers or whatever, right?
Exactly.
Cool.
So with your profile, I set up these opportunities for you to hit Salesforce, Gmail, whatever, understanding that this authentication that you're just now seeing is happening at the cloud, and then the data then terminates on that application or SaaS application on the far end.
So this is my Chrome talking to Salesforce in a micro-segmented container behind the firewall.
Yes, that's exactly right.
That's pretty sweet. That's easy to use. And I
You know,
just, how many, how many, how many, what is that container support? What's the scale of that?
yeah, so the containers scale up to 2,000 users, but much like Google, that you can scale multiple containers. So if you had
And
10,000 users, you would have presumably 5 or 6 containers driving all that activity.
and that's just regular spinning up a container.
That's exactly right.
All right. And you said that, so there's DLP functions in here. If if we have um, if we have our own DLP, other DDoS stuff in our network, we can set this up in front of it or behind it or either, I suppose.
Yeah, presumably if you've got DLP deployed or other controls that's protecting outbound data, that's only going to help you if you're going outbound, right? And you're in the environment. What this is actually going to do is keep me from taking data from one of these type of apps like Gmail or SAP and cutting and pasting it into another app on my desktop, right? So there's no way for me to, from that screen, select and copy and send data elsewhere.
Pretty slick. I'll
The other
take
thing,
two.
the other thing that I think most people don't think about is traditional VPNs aren't logged. So if you're in a highly regulated environment that needs log data, um, most VPNs are only logging authentication. So John logged in, John logged out. It doesn't log that John logged in and then John went to the finance server that he didn't have permissions to, and he went to the engineering server and tried to download intellectual property. None of that gets logged. With this client and the environment that it establishes, this virtual environment, everything that happens gets logged. So if you wanted to be able to say unequivocally, we know who did what, when they did it, how they did it, um, that logging feature is built in. And even better is we can have that pipe to a 7x24 security operations center, right? So now we've got somebody watching that behavior and learning from that behavior, and then using machine learning and algorithms to find those anomalies.
That's pretty sweet.
It's a really great approach.
Yeah, that's pretty cool to do on managed and unmanaged device. Also internally, I suppose, right?
It is, absolutely.
Why wouldn't you if it's that easy to use? Well, thanks, Dave. This is terrific. Appreciate the idea.
Yeah, we're offering Overwatch here. We're offering a free 2-week trial. If you like what David, has shown you, and it seems like, a lot of your questions were answered, and he's already set up some of that for you. But for others who are watching, if you want to try it out, if you want to bring in, the decision maker of your company to take a closer look, David would be more than happy to do another demo. It only took like 15 minutes. And I feel like he's covered, a wide range of what zero trust remote access can do and how securely it could be done. So if you want that, feel free to reach out. I'll be sending an email out to everyone who participated today, and just hit reply and set up a time. Also in the chat box, I've included a landing page with our free 2-week trial. So fill out the form. That's another great way to get a demo from David, or just to learn more about what zero trust remote access can do for your company. And David, if you have any other, parting thoughts, I don't know if anybody has questions. Nobody has submitted any questions yet, but feel free to kind of wrap it up for us here today.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we're getting some feedback.
Oh.
There we go. At the end of the day, VPNs solve a purpose, but as the technology has evolved and the threats have evolved, the VPN has not. And having a tool that does application layer microsegmentation is huge. and making it easy to use, easy to deploy, easy to manage. All of those things together make this a really good fit as you're thinking about, how do I take my VPN and my remote access to the next level? From a management perspective, a lot of things we hear is we don't have the staff. Can you do this for us? This is what we do, right? We manage this for our customers. So we're happy to have that conversation. Feel free to reach out to myself, Susanna, John, and we can talk about it some more. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, David.
Yep.
We actually got one question as you were wrapping things up. One of our attendees has asked, it seems custom setup is a major part of the cost to implement this.
So custom setup really takes about 15 minutes, to be truthful. And as part of the onboarding, we actually, in this 2-week free trial, we'll do up to 3 apps, I believe. And so if you have 100 apps, it's going to take a little bit longer, but we've got folks who know how to do this. We just need to understand what applications, what are the URLs, what are the port numbers, and we can make all that happen. So it's really not a lot of work, but it is a step where we need to have a conversation with the end customer.
Thank you for answering that. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to email me later on. And I'm just happy that we did this in 24 minutes. Bravo to all of us. And I hope everyone who participated, got a lot out of this. John, thank you for sharing your challenges and dilemma, because I think all of us benefited from it. And David, thank you again for your expertise and helping us understand what Overwatch CTRA is.
Yep, happy to help.
Have a great day, everyone. Thanks. Bye, John.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Susanna.